Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome to another question time where we get to dive into your questions. We get to have a conversation about it, answer quickly, but also answer very long and...
Quickly?
Sometimes we have a quick answer.
Okay, sure. No, yeah.
But most of the times we do really drag it out, don't we?
You watch. No, I'll do it quickly today.
Quickly, straight out. Straight into it, so okay, so we've got a couple of questions today, and as always, we've got follow-up questions from Tuesday night where we talk about a specific topic. So we're going through Ecclesiastes. This week, Sano, we went through wealth. We talked about the dangers of wealth, what is wealth, the pursuit of wealth, the desire for wealth, the consequences of wealth. And we even talked about contentment at the end, about how contentment actually is the solution to destroy that desire for wealth. And we really pulled that a lot about that under the sun and how do we go beyond the sun to look for that contentment. It was a very practical night in thinking about money and thinking about wealth in our own lives as people who are very wealthy in this world. People who are watching this are quite wealthy, and so it was really hard hitting for us to actually deal with that. And think about that a little bit more. And so we have more questions on wealth today. So we'll get into them. We're going to start with Mac's question. So we looked at Ecclesiastes chapter 5 and a bit of chapter 6. And Mac has a question about one of the specific verses, which is chapter 6, verse 2. And it says, God gives a man wealth, possessions and honour so that he lacks nothing his heart desires. But God does not enable him to enjoy them, and a stranger enjoys them instead. This is meaningless, a grievous evil. So Mac is asking, is the teacher saying that God is doing evil by granting people wealth but not granting them the ability to enjoy it?
No.
See, nice and quick. Can you explain that a little bit more, Sanu?
It's a natural kind of, I guess, reading of the sentence. I think though you got to remember, like the teacher is doing a kind of observational. Well, you wouldn't call it observational humour, but it's observations on life. And so he's talking about this situation is a great evil. He's not saying that God's done evil to anyone. He's saying that this is just a circumstance that arises. But seeing this circumstance where so few people actually find true joy and satisfaction and peace and contentment in their situation, and the fact that the very means of getting at this situation is a great evil under the sun. And so if God is not there in the end to give a sense of purpose and meaning and hope to all of this, it is in the end just an awful situation. And he repeats that phrase, a grievous evil, a couple of times in this text, just to describe how terrible he finds this. And I think he's really in many ways revealing his frustration in a way he hasn't revealed it as much before. He's just saying how truly awful this is. And I think you really could turn this into a fantastic series of comedy sketches. But how terrible is it that the very means, the very drives inside of us that drive us towards wealth are the things that make gaining wealth so destructive and bad for us. And so there is almost no way out of that trap. It is just a trap. So that if you just pursue wealth as a thing in your life, it'll destroy you and you'll gain no benefit from it. So there's this rare and miraculous person, and he just sees that as, we would say today, I can't believe it. That's just,
So he's not actually, in a sense, giving that evil credibility to God. He's not saying it is God's fault. He's saying that this situation is crap.
That's exactly right. And so he's not ascribing a moral kind of judgment on God. He's saying that this situation that we've been put in, and you've got to then ask the question in the context of this book, in the context of life, why are we in this situation? And the answer always comes back to us. We're in this situation because of us. It's not because of God, it's because of us.
How do you deal with that then? Because he is saying that, well, God is choosing these things, God is ordaining it. He's recognizing that God is in control. But yet coming back to, but it's us, not God. How do we deal with that? Because I think people find that really hard.
Well, Christians deal with this, Mac, really with our doctrine of sin. This is what, in a sense, one of the true meanings of what sin is and how sin the idea of sin manifests itself. The word sin itself, at least in the original Greek language, means falling short of the mark, failing to live up to. And what this is saying, what this book is saying over and over again is there are all these good things in life, but all these things in life that are good, work and family relationships, money, all these things, we turn into evils. We turn into they have terrible consequences for us. Why? Because we take perfectly good things and we take perfectly good means or just tools or things, and we turn them into ultimate aims or ends. We turn them into things they're not. And so they end up being bad for us. So food is not bad for you, but gluttony is terrible for you. Money is not bad for you, but greed is horrifically destructive for you. We take these good things. Sex is good, but the way we do sex turns out terrible, the way we pursue it and use it. And so all of these things that are goods in life, we turn them, we pursue them in such a way that they become destructive for us. And for Christians, this is what it means to be sinners, if you like, the classic word. It's not the heart of sin is not simply doing a list of naughty things. The heart of sin is having your life, your heart, if you like, turned away from the giver of life, from the one who should be our focus, and towards the things of this world, therefore. And because we turn our hearts towards the things of this world, they become corrupted. We corrupt them. And then they become bad for us. And so it's this, and so that is a grievous evil. It's a grievous evil that the teacher sees here, because we take a good thing and it becomes bad for us. Why is there wealth without contentment? Why is there self-destructiveness? Well, it's because of us. And this is at the heart of what the Christian faith is, I guess, pointing towards a solution to in Jesus dying and rising. Jesus is bringing about a state of affairs where our lives are no longer corrupted by our desires, by our corrupted desires. And these evils and grievous states of affairs are taken away.
And that's why I think we always come back to beyond the sun.
Yep.
Because as you're saying, that's happening here and now. But when we look beyond the sun, often we're finding a solution to these evils.
Yeah, well, yes, that's right, yes. And so that's why I say every week, you need to find the answer beyond the sun, because the answer's not here. Yeah. Because when you look here, this is what you see, because what the teacher's observing is what we all observe. It's not different. And that's the interesting thing. The things he observes 3,000 years ago are pretty much exactly the same things we observe today. We can look around and see them. We can see these things playing out day by day.
Well, there you go. Again, we get into a discussion and we take a question.
No.
We're going to move on, and Duncan's actually watching, so it's great that we get to answer his question live here for him to watch. So hi, Duncan. His question is giving up all your money and possessions as foolish as hoarding wealth?
Yes.
Okay, now it's time to... Why is it foolish?
This is actually a really good question, and it's complicated. It's complicated because of really, in some senses, two different ways that the New Testament talks about, or the Gospel talks about, wealth and money. And the first way is about Jesus and about coming to him. And it really is about this idea of what we worship and who we are. And so the classic story you might have heard is the story of the rich ruler. It's in at least 3 of the 4 Gospels. I want to just very quickly go to the third Gospel, Luke, and show you. It's in Luke chapter 18, this story of the rich ruler. And this is a classic story, one of these classic encounters people have with Jesus. Because this young man comes up to Jesus. Well, it doesn't say he's a young man, it just says he's a ruler, someone who's significant and he's wealthy. And he asks Jesus what he needs to do to inherit eternal life. And Jesus kind of looks at him and he says, well, the 10 Commandments, the laws, and he lists 5 of the 10 Commandments, right? So he leaves the first couple of commandments off the list, and he just lists the last 5 or 6. And he doesn't pick up the fact that he leaves a few out, and this guy says, well, I've kept all those commands. I'm pretty awesome. So this guy is a good person. And he's the kind of person we would all think, oh, he's in, he's a religious person, he's in with God. Yeah. But then Jesus looks at him and he says, you just lack one thing. He says, sell everything you have and give it to the poor, and then come follow me and you'll have treasure in heaven. And the story goes that when he heard this, he became very sad because he was a man of great wealth. And he walks away from Jesus. And the reason Jesus speaks in such extreme ways about money in the Gospels is because of this problem that you see that we kind of highlighted in Ecclesiastes, that money becomes this all-consuming desire and an insatiable desire that we have. That money is the thing we look to for safety and security and hope and purpose. And people in the end end up serving money or worshipping money. And so in the New Testament, over and over again, greed is aligned with idolatry, with false worship, with worship of false gods. And we don't often in our world today, in the Western modern world, worship little gods, little idols. We don't have little wooden carvings that we worship in our homes, but we all have wealth. And Australia is the land of worshipping wealth. We love our money, we love our comfort. And so Jesus exposes this guy for what he worships. And so he puts to him an extreme position. And he's doing that in order to highlight the fact that he worships money. Okay, so there's one position. And you see this throughout the Gospels. We could have picked up so many different parables and stories and encounters with Jesus and seen the same sort of thing at play. Jesus is saying to people, you are worshipping something in this life. You've taken something that is a good thing and you've turned it into a god to worship. And it's a great evil. And you need to turn away from it. And so his language is extreme. But when you come to the rest of the New Testament and what it tells Christians to do and what Christians behave, it actually has a slightly different attitude to money. And it's something that we talked about on Tuesday night, about the solution and finding contentment with money. And so we talked about things like generosity. And generosity is something that helps us to understand the value of wealth and therefore to be content. But the New Testament also says other things about money and wealth. One of the things it says is that you shouldn't be a burden, and so you should work to earn money so that you're not a burden on other people. So there were some Christians who were going, well, Jesus could come back at any time, so what am I working at some job for? I'm just going to kind of quit and wait for Jesus to come back. And then what happens is everybody else has to feed them and clothe them and care for them. And he's going, no, not on. As a Christian person, we ought to love others enough to not be a burden on them, but instead be someone who contributes. And so the opposite point of view, he says in Ephesians chapter 4, the one who steals should steal no longer, but work with his hands so that he can be generous to others. We ought to not be a burden, but instead be a carer, someone who actually cares for those who actually are really in need. And so Christians ought to be working and earning money. And that includes property and wealth. The Bible's always been positive towards private ownership. People have this weird idea that Christianity is some kind of proto-communist sort of a socialist kind of idea. It's certainly not. Right back in the Ten Commandments, it talks about not coveting your neighbour's possessions. It believes in private ownership of things. And so the idea of actually having money and having things, owning houses and clothes and things, is actually, the Bible sees as a good and as a normal thing in life, and something that every Christian should be expected to have in order not to be a burden. And the other perspective is you ought to earn money to care for your family. So and Paul in 1 Timothy chapter 5 says the person who doesn't care for his own family is the worst kind of person.
So when does it become foolishness? Is it, as you said in that first little bit when we looked at the rich ruler, it's when the idol comes in. It's when you're looking at money in a different way and not actually seeing it for the reality of what it is and perhaps how we should be using it. Yeah. Foolishness is not seeing that. Yeah.
And so I guess the attitude I would say Christians need to have with money is neither of those extremes. But is, I guess, seeing it as a dangerous tool. Money's a good thing. It's a good tool, but it's a dangerous tool. It's like a chainsaw, or a welding torch. they're good tools that you can do great things with them, but they are incredibly dangerous. You know, you can lose limbs, you can kill yourself if you use your tools wrongly, and that's what money's like. Money is a dangerous tool, and so be careful. And the danger of money isn't that you'll chop your arm off. The danger is you'll lose your life because you will just begin to focus on it and see it and worship it. And so the Christian cure to that is always have your eyes focused on Jesus, not on the money, and be generous like Jesus. Have that attitude like Jesus. Then that will help you to see money for the tool that it is, and do good with it.
And so that attitude then of just giving up all your possessions can sometimes actually be just as harmful.
Oh, it's wrong.
Yeah.
On the whole, I think there might be certain circumstances where it's a good thing. You might say that somebody who is wealthy and trapped with money might need to do that in order to reset, in order to actually come to faith in Jesus. They might need to actually turn away from that thing that's possessed them, almost like an addict goes cold turkey. They might need to cut themselves off. But on the whole, the Bible doesn't see that as a good thing for Christian people to do. It sees us as needing to participate in the normal economy of the world, the normal kind of back and forth of human communities. If you're going to love people in Australia, you're going to need to be a worker in Australia. You're going to need to actually participate in the Australian economy. Now, that doesn't mean we see the Australian economy as always a beautiful, wonderful, good, godly thing. We don't. But we see living amongst these people as necessary in order to love them and care for them. And loving and caring for them is a good thing. And so to that extent, participating in the economy is a good thing.
Yeah. Well, it looks like Duncan agrees with you a little bit because he's actually quoted the same passage from Ephesians that you quoted. So I hope that's been helpful for you to just kind of think through that. And for anyone else who kind of has that question of you can have two different extremes, but actually it doesn't mean that each one is right.
Yeah.
Or either or right. Now, obviously, during question time, we deal with our leftover questions from Tuesday night that we don't have time for, but we also leave the space open for a whole bunch of different questions. Questions from anywhere in the Bible, anywhere in your head or in your heart that you just want to know more about
anywhere
God,
in your
who
life.
He is, in your faith. We're here to cover every and any topic. So we've actually got one of those random questions here today from Evie. So she's asking about Jesus giving gifts from the Holy Spirit. So she's used example like wisdom, knowledge. And she's asking, how do you know what gift you have as an individual that you've been given?
That's a really good question, Evie. Because I think we can be confused by a lot of this language. And I think one of the reasons we get confused is we think it's about me or us. What do I have? That sort of thing. And often you see it in the way we talk about gifts. It's about me or the other. But I think the important thing to notice about gifts when the Bible speaks about them is the orientation is always towards other people. And so, it's towards God as the giver, but B, it's actually about other people. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to Romans chapter 12. There are lots of places that talk about gifts. I'm going to take you just to one, book of Romans chapter 12, which is all about how do you live life in light of the mercy of God in Jesus. And right at the start of talking about this new life, he talks about not thinking of yourself more highly than you ought. And that's one of the problems when we start thinking about gifts. We start thinking about, me, and can I have something as good as that person has? It tends to be about me. But he says, no. Think about others. We're there for others. We're part of a body. We're members of a body. And there's that metaphor. God's people are like a body. That is, all the parts of the body work together for the body to be healthy and whole, and to do well. And so each member belongs to all the others, is what he says in verse 5. And he says, we have different gifts according to the grace given us. If a man's gift is prophesying, let him use it in proportion to his faith. If it is serving, let him serve. If it is teaching, let him teach. If it is encouraging, let him encourage. And so it just encourages people to actually use their gifts to serve other people, and to use that in proportion to their faith. And I think that what that means is, you've put your trust in Jesus, and so use your gifts likewise for other people. And so, how do you know you have a gift? Well, I think the easiest way to work out is to begin to serve other people. find ways of actually serving other people, serve your brothers and sisters, and you will find what God has gifted you to do and how He's gifted you to serve. That's the focus. The focus is always other people. And I think gifts are a range of different things. Often we think of gifts as some kind of miraculous intervention by God. You know, God somehow comes down to me and gives me something I didn't already have. Yeah. But I actually think a lot of the time, you look at the gifts He mentions here, teaching, serving, encouraging, contributing, leading. It's showing mercy. These are a range of different things. And I think a lot of the gifts God gives, He gives genetically, He gives through our family, through our socialisation, through our personalities. Some of us are just able to do things, or are more inclined to act in certain ways, or some of us are really good at getting alongside people. Some of us are better with numbers. Some of us, and He talks about a whole range of things that we would think that just seems really ordinary. I think it's because they are. And what He's talking about here is that you're a person. God's made you the person that you are, and as a person, you have abilities, you have aptitudes, and you need to turn towards other people and use yourself to serve them. And if you do that, God will show you your gifts, I think. And so I would say, don't worry too much about thinking, what is my gift so that I can use it. Think, who do I need to serve and how do I need to serve them? And then God will sort out what your gifts and aptitudes are to serve those people.
A question about gifts that me and someone that I'm reading the Bible with, because we've come across another passage that talks about gifts in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. And our question was, can you just have one gift, or can you actually have a range of gifts? Because the way that you've talked about it, and that kind of, who are you as a person, what gifts do you have? I think sometimes people think you can only have one gift and that's it. Right.
Honestly, I think the Bible doesn't really speak that clearly on all these things. It doesn't really say. I agree. I don't think there is just one gift you have. I think the reality is you will have a range of different abilities that you can use and gifts that you can use to serve other people. And so, yes, I tend to think it may be different things at different times. You may use one gift in one fellowship or group of Christians, and then if you move somewhere else, you may actually do something very different. And that's okay. You may learn some things. You may grow in some abilities and skills, and that may give you different gifts you can use to serve. And so, the classic is learning to lead a Bible study group, for instance, or learning how different systems work at church, so that you can actually help with all the tech. And you didn't know that, but you learned it. I knew a guy who his church didn't have many musicians, and so he basically picked up a guitar and learned how to play guitar so that he could serve the church that way. Well, that's a learned gift over time. So I think, yes, you can have multiple gifts. You can change. You can do different things.
So Evie's popped on and she's watching, and she's asked basically a follow-up. How does she know what her gift is then?
And I would say, Evie, serve other people and you'll find out.
But how, I think she wants a bit more practically, but how will she know? Like, will she see that she is good at something? Will someone say, oh, okay, that was really helpful?
I guess all kinds of different things might happen. You may begin to serve people and you may see a need that they have, and you may skill up and learn something that you weren't particularly gifted at, but that you become gifted at for the sake of other people. You may have a natural aptitude or ability that people notice, and you begin to use that to serve people. God may actually help you to see ways that you can serve other people. All of those things could be true, and so it's really hard for me, to look at the camera, but it's really hard for me to look at you and go, "Oh, this is your gift." I think if I got to know you over time, I could probably say, oh, I think you are like this, Evie, and I can see these things about you, and I can see they're great gifts that God's given you, and that you might turn those gifts then back towards the church and begin using them to serve. And so I think that might come with time, with knowing you well. But in terms of knowing what your gifts are, I think turn around and begin to serve people, and I think you'll find out.
So you can start doing things with your friends in ways to serve them. You can start doing things and just noticing. I think once you ask the question as well about, well, what is my gift?
Yeah.
You all of a sudden have an awareness that you haven't perhaps thought of before. And so all of a sudden you're going to start looking at, well, what am I good at? How am I serving in a way that is really helpful for God and his kingdom?
Yeah.
But also talking to people. I think that's been a helpful thing as a Christian growing, is people who know you will be able to say, okay, we want you to help out in this way because we see that that's what you can bring to this situation, and having those people around you to help you out is really helpful as well.
Yeah, I think so. And I think a fundamental of the Christian faith, right at the very heart of the Christian faith, is that it is focused on others, not ourselves. That's the very nature of it, because we follow a Saviour, we follow a God who did not think of himself but thought of others, who entered the world in order to serve people, and who in the end died for people to serve them. And so that's our pattern. The pattern is always to look to others and begin to serve them, not to focus on ourselves. And any time we begin to kind of think about me, we've actually lost the drift. We've lost really, in a sense, the heart of what it means to be a Christian person, which is why when in Romans chapter 12, where it begins talking about what it means to be and live as a Christian, it begins with this: don't think more highly of yourself, think of others. Put the needs of others, see yourself as part of the body, serve the body. And then the next thing it says is love. Self-sacrificially serve the good of another, which is what is at the heart of love in a Christian sense. The Christian definition of love is a self-sacrificial commitment to the good of another person. And so these things are at the heart of being Christian. And I think if you do those things, you will find joy because you won't be worried or concerned. You're not worried, what are my gifts? Well, how do I find it out? You don't need to worry about those things. You'll be joyful, and you will actually find your gifts, and you'll find you didn't need to look all that hard. But there they are.
Yeah, so I hope that's helpful for you, Evie, as you ask this question and start looking obviously at yourself and trying to figure that out. I think that's what we've got time for today. That's the questions that we've done. We went through them, dived in deep. We had some good discussions. So keep on sending us your questions, keep on commenting and chatting with each other, and we'll see you next time we jump on.
See you later.